Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Ty. Today I'll be showing you how to create this makeup inspired by Bootstrap Bill from Pirates of the Caribbean. I'll show you how I made the prosthetics. I am in no way a professional, so keep that in mind. All of the products I use are going to be linked down below, so keep on watching if you want to learn how to do this really cool makeup look. First, I'm going to start off by making the star prosthetic. I am not a professional in any sort of way, so I use things I have laying around the house. I'm going to be using modeling clay to create a sculpt for the star prosthetic. To create the prosthetic, I'm going to be using this face. You can use a flat surface or anything that's a little bit slightly rounded that imitates the shape of your face. We're covering it with some Vaseline to make sure that the Play-Doh or the modeling clay doesn't stick to it. Started off by warming up the modeling clay with my hands and started making a really basic star shape and placing it on the face and kind of measuring out how big I wanted it to be and adding some more modeling clay wherever I needed, using the reference picture as my guide to really creating a similar prosthetic than the one that is in the picture. As you can see from the reference picture, the star looks like it's growing out of his face and really like expanding from it. So I wanted to create that illusion as well, and I tried doing that by really blending out those edges and kind of blending them into the face. When I create projects, I want them to be as affordable as they can possibly be because, you know, I don't want to break my bank doing these crazy looks. So I really tried to make everything DIY'd. I'm always trying to find ways to create even more affordable prosthetics and affordable products to create these crazy looks. So I was searching through Amazon and I found this really cool material I had never heard of. It's foam clay. You can mold it and kind of play around with it and create really cool shapes and sculptures as if it were real clay. It's pretty cool and it's pretty lightweight. So I decided to use it to create that same star I was doing, but in a different form to really try and play around with making prosthetics. And I really wanted to create something that would look good both on texture and shape. Comparing the foam clay to modeling clay, I found that it was way harder to create really soft edges and really blendable edges that looked natural instead of it looking like it was resting on your face. So I liked that more about the modeling clay. You can really create those really cool edges, but with the foam clay you can create some really cool textures and not mess it up as quickly as you can with the modeling clay. I think the foam clay is perfect for creating things that don't need to look like they're blended into your skin. So for example, if you were to create some horns, that would work out perfectly. Or if you wanted to create some little extra pieces like I did with the little seashells and the algae, I think that would work great instead of creating something that's blended into your skin. I created the little shells sticking out of his face. I don't know if they're oysters, by squishing the foam clay into a circle, a flat circle, and then folding that within itself, creating this like oval shaped thing with a little line in the center. I created a couple of these just to really fill out the side of my face, and as well as the little algae things I created earlier by just kind of squishing the foam around, making some little holes, and really playing around with it to create those really cool shapes. This modeling clay star is going to be out of a latex prosthetic, so I'm going to create the texture and sculpt the sculpture with the modeling clay and then apply the latex to create the actual prosthetic. Every single time I create a latex prosthetic, I lose a lot of the texture that I want to show and that I make in the sculpt. So with this one, I really wanted to exaggerate the texture. So I wanted to create this one as if it were the mold of the sculpture instead of the sculpture itself, therefore creating a negative space instead of a positive space. Like everything that I wanted to be outwards, I would sculpt into the modeling clay, and everything that I wanted to be inwards in the prosthetic, I would sculpt outwards in the modeling clay. It's a little bit hard to explain and kind of understand, but basically all those little holes that you see in the sculpture are going to be filled with latex. So therefore, when I take the latex prosthetic out, they're going to be outwards and going to be kind of like coming out. And then these little lines that I'm creating here in the center of the star are going to be inwards in the actual prosthetic. It's kind of hard to really comprehend. I think I don't even understand it myself, but you're going to see how it turns out. So after you're done with your sculpture, make sure to apply some Vaseline on it so the latex doesn't stick to it, or any sort of release spray. And then start with the liquid latex. I started out by using those little disposable makeup sponges because everything that touches latex will get ruined, so beware. You have been warned. When you start applying the latex, you want to focus it on the center of the star to really create a nice base for when you remove it so it doesn't rip. I did around 3 to 4 layers of latex to really build it up so it doesn't break or snap whenever I remove it. Once you have enough latex on your star, you want to start building up the edges and really create a thin edge so it's easier to apply when you apply it on your face, and it's not like bulky, it doesn't have like hard edges, and it looks smooth and kind of like blends into your skin. Compared to other types of prosthetics like silicone prosthetics, you can't really blend the edges out. You have to kind of like make them really thin so they look blended into your skin. Once everything was dry, I started off by using some powder to really set the latex, because latex sticks to itself, so you have to set it, otherwise it's gonna like all stick together. And you want to start by powdering the outer part of the prosthetic and then start lifting up the edges and powder underneath and start removing it from the surface. Once you remove the whole prosthetic, you're supposed to be able to actually remove the modeling clay from the prosthetic and separate it from the latex. But this is where my project took kind of a turn. My modeling clay stuck onto the latex and it was really hard to remove. I started off by taking every chunk or big piece that I could out. At this point, it kind of seemed like an impossible project to continue. That's why I made 2 types of prosthetics, because I really wanted to try out different ways of creating it. But I kept trying, and I was able to remove almost every single piece of modeling clay from the prosthetic. It was pretty hard to remove those that were stuck on the texture. This is why making these types of at-home projects takes a little longer, and kind of really playing around with different ways of creating new things. By creating so many layers of latex on top of the original sculpt, you lose a lot of that detail that you originally made, because it kind of just like lays on top of each other and it really like erases every single detail. So removing every piece or most of the modeling clay from inside the prosthetic was very important, because I had to flip it inside out to really bring out the texture that we made originally when I explained about the negative, positive space thing. I ended up using some soap and water to really scrub out most of the modeling clay, and then I had to powder it down so it wouldn't stick to itself. And then when I was happy with how it looked, I flipped it inside out and filled it with some cotton balls to give it back some shape, because when you turn it around it kind of loses that shape. So I wanted to really fill it up so it would be as similar to the original sculpt as possible. This is how it ended up looking like. I think the texture looked great. I was pretty happy with how it turned out, but we had to close off the prosthetic in the back so we didn't have that exposed cotton. So I went ahead and grabbed a Ziploc bag or any sort of plastic surface. I applied some Vaseline, and we're gonna use this to create some layers of latex. We're gonna do a bunch of layers to create a back for the star, so it's kind of like sealed and the cotton doesn't stick to your face. I made the surface big enough and tried to measure it out as best as possible so it would fit the whole back of the star, and did around 3 to 4 layers of latex, drying it with the blow dryer in between each layer. I then placed the cotton side of the prosthetic facing the layers of latex that we just made, making sure to put it in a way that it wasn't completely flat against the layers of latex. Instead, I'm kind of like pinching the sides to make it pop a little bit more. I then added some more latex with my fingers on the edges to blend out the edges of the star prosthetic with the layers of latex, and then I started removing it with a small powder brush the same way we did earlier. It ended up having some extra edges that I didn't want, so I went ahead and grabbed some scissors and cut them following the natural line of the star, making sure that the edges don't stick with them themselves and adding powder if it was needed. And then we are done. That is the star latex prosthetic. I really liked it compared to the foam clay prosthetic. The foam clay prosthetic kind of shrunk when it dried down, and the latex one has way more texture than I would have imagined. I really like how it looked. It looked really, really cool. In my opinion, the latex prosthetic looked way more real than the foam one. Now we're moving on to applying all of the prosthetics. I started off using a glue stick to cover my eyebrows. I always have to do a bunch of layers to actually cover them, so I did about 3 to 4, almost 5 layers, really brushing them out and flattening them against my face, using a Q-tip and some water to clean off any excess glue on the eyebrow. Then I used a powder puff and some powder to press on the eyebrows and really seal the glue on the eyebrows. Moving on to applying the prosthetics, I started off by checking where I wanted this big prosthetic to be. When I selected where I wanted it to be, I added some latex on the back to glue it to my face and pressed it on, making sure that the edges didn't fold inwards instead of laying flat across my face. Some people like to use spirit gum or some Prosthetic adhesive, but I didn't have that, so I used latex. With some latex and a Q-tip, I went over all of the edges to really try and make them blend into my skin. Like I said, latex prosthetics are pretty hard to make them seem like they're blending and easily like melting into the skin. Once I was happy with the edges on the star and the big prosthetic, I moved on to the smaller accessories. I started placing the little shells and oysters on the side of my face, kind of following the original picture and trying to recreate it as close as possible. But I started just placing them wherever I thought would look the best. Trying to stay true to the original makeup look, I placed some of the smaller pieces on the other side of my face and like on the cheekbones, on the brow areas. And around those foam clay prosthetics, I used some latex to blend out the edges so they didn't look like they were just laying on top of my skin. I tried to add some more latex to try and make it look like it was growing out of my face. Using a part of a makeup sponge, those disposable ones, I ripped it apart and grabbed some smaller pieces, dipped them in latex, and placed them on some other parts of my face. I then grabbed some latex and a Q-tip and kind of like smeared it across my face, making little dots and spots across my face. So when I paint over them, it would have a little bit of texture and like odd skin-like features. In the original makeup look, he has some little holes across his face close to the starfish around the brow area, so I grabbed some scar wax and tried to simulate those little holes that he has on the makeup look. when I started doing the face paint, I had some issues with my camera and it stopped filming for some reason. So I'm gonna add some clips from my TikTok explaining a little bit how I made this skin color possible. Then I'll come back on voiceover and explain a little bit more on how I painted the prosthetics and my process that went into making this color possible. Now I'm using the NYX color correcting concealer, the purple one, so I have a slightly blue and purple undertone. Now I'm using a green tone. I'm adding it randomly across my face. Now I'm using the white and applying a really sheer layer. Now I'm adding some extra details with the Bruce wheel using these two colors. With that Bruce wheel, I went in with that green and the dark blue into all of the other items that weren't colored yet, like the little algae. I colored it green and then went in with the darker blue on the deeper parts of the prosthetic. Using that same green, I took a sponge and broke it in half and used that textured area to create some texture across my face, randomly scattering it across my face. And with that same dark blue, I took a really thin painting brush and created some veins and lines across my face, tapping it in with my fingers to really blend it out and make it look like it's part of that see-through looking like skin. For the star prosthetic, I just went in with some water activated paints from Maron with the orange and that dark blue or a black into the deeper areas, and then I went over it with a dotting tool and some white on the little dots to bring some highlights into the star. Taking some grays or dark blues and adding them around my eye area, around my nose, around the star to really add some depth to the look and create more of a messier look, like you've been awake for days type of thing. I also took some red or pinky eyeshadows and placed them close to my lash line to really create that kind of like reddish eye look. These little details like the shadows, the highlights are the things that actually create the look and make it look even more realistic and make it really come to life. Adding those little details to make it look messier or cleaner really adds to the look. You can really go from looking like a pale ghost to a pale ghost with some history. To really sell this look, I went ahead and grabbed some moss to add in any places where it looked a little empty or that it needed some extra pizzazz. And finally moved on to the hair. I grabbed some mousse, but mostly water, and put it on my hair just to make it look like I just came out of the ocean. If you're gonna use this look to go out somewhere, I suggest using some gel to really make it look wet and make it last long, because the water is gonna evaporate. So added the final details for the costume, and this is how I created Bootstrap Bill from Pirates of the Caribbean. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like down below, subscribe, and make sure to follow along because Halloween season is close and I will be uploading way more videos like this, mostly on YouTube Shorts, TikTok, and Instagram, but stay tuned because I will be uploading longer videos here on YouTube, and comment down below some suggestions for more Halloween looks I should do this spooky season. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.